Walking through the city, lights all aglow. Everybody's got a story to show. Wheels keep spinning, streets overflow. Hustle never stops, we're in the flow. Skylines high like our dreams in the air. Concrete jungle, we got flair. Rhythm of the night, we don't care. Underneath the stars we breathe rare. In this urban jungle we're alive. Heartbeats echo as we strive. Dreams collide where the streets survive. Together we'll thrive, side by side. Echoes of the past linger near. Future calls, we face it with no fear. Every corner tells a tale so clear. In the city, we chase what we hold dear. Shadows and whispers blend in the night. City's pulse beats with all its might. Lost in the chaos, but it feels right. We rise above, reach new heights. In this urban jungle, we're alive. Heartbeats echo as we strive. Dreams collide where the streets survive. Together we'll thrive, side by side.
And welcome to this weekend's Anzac Day special. Now, just the reason why we need to tell you about the names, our darling Prime Minister has led by example. How many Prime Ministers have to go to Gallipoli and have to have a polo shirt with their name embroidered on there? So we thought tonight we would celebrate that by reminding the public who we are. And also like to welcome to the show Rob Goulden, who is of many titles, including being a retired army captain. How are you this evening, coming from another postcode, but in the same electorate as myself?
I love coming from the same electorate as you do, Sam. So it's great. Was that your
you're definitely still in the Rongotai electorate.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I live in Miramar. I'm coming to you live from Miramar. So.
Oh, okay. Well, that's over the hill, one postcode away from Newtown.
That's right. Oh, well, yeah, you're right. Okay.
Oh, I know. You get the special 6022, whereas we got the 6021.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, not far away. We're only a phone call away, Sam.
Yeah, I'm going to follow what Kiwi Skirt's advice is. We're going to say show host to prime host.
Prime host?
Oh, yes. Oh, like Prime Minister.
Oh, yes.
That's the piss take out of it. I mean, we could do first host, which is like our first minister, but we call them prime ministers in New Zealand. And how's Laura?
Trying to be on my best behaviour because I know not to mess around with a captain. I know better than that.
Well done. Good tactics, Laura.
Yes. So today's show, we're going to be covering the Anzac Bill, which seems a very blunt name that actually does a lot more things than what's in it. And if we've got some time, we can have what is a very quick members bill of the Jury Excusal age change bill, which from members bill of Carl Bates.
Yeah, that'll be interesting.
So, shall we kick off with our first speech?
Yep, take it away.
Okay, let's kick off with the Honourable Chris Pink. Wrong one there. This is the one we want. The Honourable Chris Pink, who is stepping in on the behalf of the Minister of Justice, Paul Goldsmith. And let's kick off Chris's speech.
Motion is agreed. Call on Government Order of the Day number 1.
Anzac Day Amendment Bill, first reading.
That legislative statement is... Oh, sorry. The Honourable Paul Goldsmith. The Honourable Chris Pink.
Thank you, Sir. Seeking a call to present a legislative statement on the Anzac Day Amendment Bill.
That legislative statement is published under the authority of the House and can be found on the Parliament's website. The Honourable Chris Pink.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I move that the Anzac Day Amendment Bill be now read a first time, and I nominate the Foreign Affairs, Defence and Trade Committee to consider the bill. Sir, I'll start in slightly unusual fashion, if I may, to invite any members who are giving contributions on this matter the opportunity to wear poppy. I've placed the number down by the mace along with some pins if any colleagues wish to avail themselves of that opportunity. Of course, we are only a matter of a few short weeks ahead of Anzac Day, and there'll be other opportunities, of course, for members to express their support for our veterans through the RSA Welfare League, and I'm encouraged to see the response already in that regard. So I also want to acknowledge the Minister for Arts, Culture and Heritage, whose name technically could or should be on this bill, but as the Anzac Day Act is a matter of considerable significance to our nation's veterans, I am very pleased to be able to speak to it on behalf of the government, and recognising particularly that for our ex-service personnel, the impact that they will feel for the changes we are making. So in a way, the bill that we have before us is in the realm of symbolic recognition, but symbols are important, not least of all to our armed forces. Poppies, medals, flags, silver ferns and other symbols represent the ideals for which generations of men and women in this country have fought and in some cases paid the ultimate sacrifice. The bill that comes before the House today, sir, is designed to provide for broader and more inclusive recognition and commemoration on Anzac Day of those who have served our country in wars and warlike operations. The Anzac Day Act 1966 currently restricts recognition and commemoration to those who served in 6 specified conflicts, ending with the war in South Vietnam. By being limited to the specific named conflicts, the Act is currently too narrow. I think for many of us who have attended Anzac Day services, and I acknowledge members across the House who inevitably will have done that in their respective local areas, clearly the mood of the nation in the year 2025, and of course in many recent years, has been that we must take a much more broad and inclusive approach. It's appropriate that our legislation catches up with that. We must take account of the recent conflicts and other operations in which our people have served, as well as conflicts actually before that time that were not specified in the legislation. The restrictiveness of the current law excludes a number of circumstances where Kiwi personnel have served their country with bravery and distinction, and where recognition from their fellow citizens, and of course the government on behalf of those citizens, is richly deserved. The wording of the Act does not at present include military service by personnel in the New Zealand Armed Forces or others in allied forces in wars or warlike conflicts, such as UN missions or multi-force groupings or organisations. I think, sir, of service like the UN Peacekeeping Force on the Sinai Peninsula, among others. And neither does the present version of the Act cover non-military service in a war or warlike conflict involving New Zealand. For example, the Home Guard defending New Zealand, medical personnel, and members of the Merchant Navy during the World Wars, and members of the New Zealand civilian surgical team who served in the Vietnam conflict as well. In other words, so we aim to be much more comprehensive and fair in recognising all these people in this way. New Zealand residents and others also served in Allied forces in the 2 World Wars. And some New Zealand Armed Forces personnel who enlisted to serve their country died in service training incidents. They too should not be forgotten. And neither should we forget those from other Allied Force countries who were there with the Kiwis when the first Allied troops landed on Gallipoli in 1915, such as India and France, on whom the Act is currently silent. By naming some countries service personnel but not others, we have perhaps unwittingly but nevertheless excluded in a very real way those who also served. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't point out, sir, that there were others who served in nations with whom we were then in conflict, with whom we have very friendly and cordial and constructive relationships, including in a security sense, but of course more broadly, people-to-people links, economic relationships such as trade and so on. So we aim to keep Anzac Day and the commemorations that take place annually on the 25th of April as relevant this year and next year and so on as they were last year and all the years previous. So the change being made is a small one, and I acknowledge that. But I think nevertheless, sir, and I hope that members will agree, it is a powerful one. It will create a new Section 2 in the Act, and this will broaden recognition and commemoration of all who have served New Zealand, including those who have passed away, but not only those, in times of war and warlike conflict. The government, on behalf of the people of New Zealand, bears the significant responsibility of improving the way that we honour and acknowledge those who have served our nation humbly, courageously and with great loyalty. So I do just want to mention in my remaining time that this is of course a broader stream of work that has been undertaken over a number of different years and across successive governments. There are others in the House, including previous ministers, who will recognise the discussion that has been held about, for example, having in law a recognition of a kawanata or covenant that would recognise the service of our armed forces to the people of New Zealand. Those are beyond the scope of this bill, and so I don't intend to traverse those subjects today. But with Anzac Day coming soon, no doubt these conversations will soon come to the fore again. It's appropriate they do so. And as I stated publicly, albeit within the Whakatane RSA, but reported more widely, in response to a gesture made by Warrant Officer Willie Apiata VC, I have heard those calls for a broader recognition. And yes, it may be that it is appropriate to think about ways that we can recognise symbolically those who have served New Zealand as veterans in a way that doesn't threaten the integrity or the current structure of the Veteran Support Act. Those conversations, as I say, sir, are for another day. And for now, though, I do wish to acknowledge them. I do wish to point out that the commitment made by the Prime Minister at the RSA's annual conference of last year is being honoured by the introduction of this Act, and we've committed to having it passed before Anzac Day of 2026. The support of other members of the House, including across the parties, as well as, of course, our friends and partners in Coalition, will be very welcome indeed. So with that, sir, I conclude simply by reiterating those themes upon which the legislation is based. Anzac Day must be much more inclusive. Its focus must be not solely on the past, but also recognising already the comments that are quite rightly made around the country on the 25th of April that it represents to the future as well as the present. We have a duty to honour those who serve us. This bill will go some small way to ensuring that we do so. We will remember them.
Well, that's unusual to not hear the word "I commend this bill" to the House. So that was unusual. Rob, your 2 cents worth.
I think it's great. I had a read of the one page before I came on the show, Sam. So it really it's just an update of the 1966 bill. Talks about Anzac Day and the special day that it is to, I think, every New Zealander. So it's commemorative and it's great like that. And then it talks about that service, and I could think of many examples, some in my own family, which has only just been recently recognised. My father served in 2 places, in Kashmir for 2.5 years, one on the first UN missions, served in the Sinai and the Goulden just after the 73 war and that sort of thing. And there was, while there was UN medallic, I guess, recognition of that, it never recognised. He had RF and TF service, and for 16 years, and he was never recognised with a long service award till a couple of years ago. So it's great. It recognises there's many other conflicts as well, where people have gone on, like the Mururoa duties. They've gone to other parts of the world, like the Falklands, even as far back as the early 80s. In many places, New Zealanders have gone that wouldn't have been included in those original 6 major conflicts. So there's been so many, like dozens of places New Zealanders have served, including our only living Victoria Cross holder, who served in Iraq, East Timor, and Afghanistan. I mean,
That's Willie Apiata.
Yeah, Willie Apiata, exactly. So, I mean, why wouldn't you recognise that service of those many, and there's thousands of, I believe there's about 60,000 people that have served since Vietnam. You know, you'd think the RSA would be twice as large. So it's recognising that service that many New Zealanders, men and women, give to this country. And it's fantastic. So that's great. I hope that heals a few wounds for a few people. Yeah.
I mean, I see it as a step in the right direction. I do hope that Willie Apiata's request to redefine or expand the definition of a veteran does get acknowledged, and I really hope that this bill doesn't kind of get used to go, okay, we've addressed the veterans, now we can move on with other bills. It's like, no, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done, and I 100% support Willie Apiata in his efforts to get the definition expanded.
Yeah, that's great. And then you've got that the sort of byproduct of that of care and that, you know, access to care and medical care, the things that we now talk about and have been talking about it for a few years. You know, the PTSD people suffer from and the wounds. I guess other families. I was. If you don't mind me telling you, I was away on a couple of weeks ago on the Ride of Respect, which raises money for veterans and their families, and we had one got raised on that day of a case that had just fallen through the cracks. with a veteran who ended up taking his own life, and then leaving a family with a who I believe the woman, the wife, had terminal cancer. Terrible circumstances, and those things get missed. So it's great to see there's some recognition of that sort of service. But it's warlike service. I just had a look at the definition because I like sort of legal stuff.
Yep.
And looking at that, it's a warlike conflict where, and here's the key: there is armed conflict that has occurred or is occurring, or they're in a place where it might recur. So our people can at any one time can be sitting off the coast of Bosnia on a ship, or sitting off the Falkland Islands and that sort of. So they're taking the same, not maybe quite the same risks as but they're in war zones. I mean, that's what they're in. They're very dangerous places where things happen and even mistakes get made. So yeah, that's great. I think it's good. But yeah, I think Willie comes at it for Willie Apiata comes from it. He's very interested in the welfare. Given where he's been to many incredible places in the world, and a great guy. He's interested in the welfare of veterans and their families, and I think that's incredible.
Okay, let's get on to Penny Henry.
Penny Henry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In the very same RSA in Whakatane, my first Anzac Day as Defence Minister, I began my speech by reflecting upon the situation or the position I found myself in, whereby my great-grandfather, MP of this House for 28 years, actively recruited for the Pioneer Battalion who served in World War I, and then continued to actively recruit alongside Serapira Ngata during his time here in Parliament for active service for what became known as the 28th Māori Battalion in the Second War, of which my grandfather, his son, served, and his final posting was as the commander of the 28th Māori Battalion. And then I had found myself as a Defence Minister speaking in the very same RSA in Whakatane and acknowledging that our people are involved in conflict and in wars and in peacekeeping services right around the world. And while it may be an unspoken thing that when we show up to an Anzac Day, we acknowledge them and we remember them, I think this move with this particular bill is an important one and a symbolic one. And I acknowledge the Minister for bringing this here to the House. When we commemorate on Anzac Day, it's a special time. It's emotional. It allows us to reflect on our past, to think about our current day, and also to plan for our future. Mr. Speaker, we support this bill. And what I say to those who are proposed to come under the remit of this particular bill in changing the Anzac Day legislation, I want them to continue to remember the specific days that are important to them. We know, for example, the New Zealand Merchants' Day is a different day to Anzac Day, and they have their own services. In fact, I've been to a number in Tauranga, and I know members across the House have been there. It is important we continue to remember them all during Anzac Day, but I want to just offer a word of encouragement to those who will finally come under the remit of this legislation through this bill, that they continue to remember the days that are important to them, that are significant to them, and I'm sure they will. But those are the kinds of testaments and memorials that we hope never to be lost in time, and I do continue to encourage that. I also reflect, Mr. Speaker, on the time in my first term here in Parliament where there was a significant push for the New Zealand Land Wars recognition, to which we unveiled a plaque in this House to remember that. And while these gestures are symbolic and they may take some time, we acknowledge that we've come on a significant journey, certainly over the past decade and even beyond then, to allowing the recognition through this particular bill, which is why we will continue to support this bill. We will encourage, of course, many of our veterans, our service personnel, current and past, to make sure that their voice is heard, that there are submissions on this particular bill where we might have, through the passage of time, forgotten a particular conflict or something rather, something that's important to them. I think it's important that their voices continue to be heard through the process and the progress of this bill, Mr. Speaker. So we support this bill for the Labour Party, once again encouraging submitters, also encouraging those with significant days to continue to commemorate, celebrate and come together on those days to remember the deeds of those who have served and who continue to serve. Finally, from my side, Mr. Speaker, I acknowledge the Minister's comments with respect to the Kawenata and with respect to the ongoing work when we look towards the acknowledgement and the honouring of veterans. And I know that's a significant piece of work from my time and subsequent ministers. And of course now I acknowledge the act of my cousin Willie Apiata VC in handing the VC to the Minister, which comes with a huge burden. And we want to say to the Minister and to this government that in a true bipartisan approach, we would be more than happy to make sure a door is open so that we can have those discussions to honour these people in the way that they deserve. And so we leave that door open to the Minister, and we look forward to ongoing conversation for this bill and the matter that I've just raised. We support this bill.
Wow.
You find out all sorts of interesting stories, and what's good about the Whakatane RSA.
There must be something in the beer, Sam, and I've got to say that because isn't it lovely to see a bipartisan approach across the House like that? You know, normally it's such a it's almost a war zone some days in its own right. But it's just lovely to see a bipartisan approach like that across the House about something that is really quite, you know, spent the day at Anzac Day and dawn service the other day, and it really is a wonderful day for New Zealanders to really think about stuff.
How was the dawn service in Wellington? Because I'll be honest, I slept in.
Samuel. Shall I call him Samuel, Laura? Yeah. No.
Well, you can use my was it ATC rank of corporal?
Nah, it was seriously a stunning day, a stunning speech from. I thought Nicola Willis's speech was great. It was just a beautiful day. I spent it with an old friend I've known for 48 years. He carried the RSA flag for the last time after 23 years. It's just that sort of day where people are, I guess, disarmed and just happy. It doesn't matter who you're talking to, whether you're talking to a veteran that's 90 years old or the youngest member of the family who's probably by now their great or even great-great-grandfather was. And it's just good that they understand all that, and it's such a special day. And it's a Pukeapu. That's the second time I've been there in about 4 weeks because we were there for the Right of Respect, and it's a special place every time you go, and I'm glad it's there.
I know when I worked at BP, we had one of our regular customers was a lower down staff member of the Turkish embassy. Every Anzac Day, even that he was on the other side, even that his ancestors were on the other side of the war, he would go down to Anzac Day every single year for the dawn service as if he was part of us. It quite amazing. And he said it was something he always did the whole time he'd been working at the Turkish embassy, is that every Anzac Day, him, along with many of his colleagues, will all go down to Anzac Day to do the dawn service and all of the things that went with it as part of their role of being in New Zealand. Even that they didn't have to, they chose to do it.
Yeah, there was some amazing things said in the speech from, in fact, the ambassador from there the other day about what Ataturk had actually said, you know, about all the deceased New Zealanders that are there, and now they're in the bosom of the country where they fell, and they would take care of them, and yeah, it's funny when you go to different parts of the world and you see these places. I was on Crete about 20 years ago, and there's 300. It's quite weird when you go there and you go to a place like Suda Bay, and then you see for the first time there's 300 Kiwis buried there. So I get it why people from those other countries, in some cases where they've been in opposition, but in some cases where Kiwis, they are like on Crete, they just love the Kiwis there in terms of what they did for them 80 years ago now. You know, it's, and they never forget it. They never forget it.
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem commemorating the services of people that have fought in past wars, but I guess kind of like my fear is that we need to be very careful about the way how we talk about war to civilians, that we don't just talk about glorification of war, but we also acknowledge the harm that was done to veterans that came back from war and how they were treated by the Crown. Like after World War I, when Māori troops came back, including my own ancestor, they didn't receive a pension. They didn't receive
Wow.
the same benefits and entitlements as their Pākehā counterparts, as my Pākehā ancestors who fought at Gallipoli. So, yeah, it's like I'm more than fine in acknowledging and respecting and remembering the sacrifices that were made. But also part of that sacrifice was the way how they were treated when they came back home. And
Yeah.
I don't want to lose that. I think it's very important that we hold on to that fact and continue to hold the government accountable for past actions that they have done against veterans.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point, Laura. There's been a lot of injustices over the years, just in terms of. There's a very good one, a very obvious one, even if you talk about medallic stuff in terms of the World War One medals were all named around the edge of the medal. When the guys came back, some of them from the Second World War, they were told to apply for them. Do you know a lot of guys, even in the early 1990s, that I came across, some 45 years after the war, had these things sitting in the grease-proof paper wrapping because they just never bought, or they applied for them and they just put them in a drawer. They didn't mean anything to them because they weren't presented to them, and they felt they were owed that by their just little things like that, where they looked after. Did we look after their mental health and that sort of thing after them? And warfare's, I've got to tell you, I've been in 3 different war zones in my lifetime, and very close to one where the 4th one where my father worked. They are not nice places, and awful things happen there. We all know that. I've seen a lot of the aftermath, the destruction, and just the very thought of people. I was very lucky with Yugoslavia. If I can just diverse a little bit, I'd been there backpacking in '83. I went there to work there in '94, '95, and then I went back there. So it was before, during, and after. And it's very incredible the change. Yeah, the before, what might have led up to it, the then, and 4 or 5 years of that, and then the after, the recovery and people getting back to trying to get back to normal life. Some people struggle with getting back to their normal life there for the rest of their life, and that's awful. And then, lack of recognition and things like that. So, very important in this legislation. It's only a small little act, but it's good.
I hope it's in the right direction.
Next up, Steve Abel.
Mr. Speaker.
Steve Abel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I stand in support of this bill on behalf of Te Pāti Kakariki, the Green Party. I think it's important for us to fill the gaps for those who have served New Zealand in various contexts around conflict and military service, including UN peacekeeping. I remember talking to a veteran who was on board the ships, I think it was the Pukaki, that went to Christmas Island in 1958 for the British nuclear testing and was exposed to radiation. He was one of the 10 servicemen on board the vessel who was tasked with the job of spraying down the fallout after it had landed on the ship. And he said he was the last of those 10 still alive. And he was not recognised because he had never actually been in warfare for that service, even though it cost him his friends and cost them their lives because of the radiation exposure. This sort of bill helps to capture all of those who have served in such a manner as to give themselves for supposedly the good of the country. One thing I find concerning, though, Mr. Speaker, is in all the background documents, there's sort of a glaring absence, and it's one that the previous speaker alluded to, is that there's no mention of the New Zealand wars. Now, I believe that the proposed wording for the new amendment, which says commemoration of the contribution of all those who have served New Zealand in time of war or warlike conflicts, would capture those in the New Zealand wars. Certainly, it would capture tangata whenua Māori who served in the New Zealand wars, and it is right that it should do that. It mentions other conflicts, as I've said. It also mentions, for example, those who served in the Home Guard. Well, I can't think of a better example of the Home Guard than the tangata whenua Māori who defended New Zealand from 1845 to 1872 against British invasion. They certainly must be included. And I find it concerning, Mr. Speaker, that there's sort of a silence in the background documents and the commentary on that inclusion. For context, Mr. Speaker, we know the great sacrifice that New Zealand soldiers, the great losses of New Zealand soldiers in the First and Second World Wars, and particularly we know of the Māori Battalion. Those wars saw around 336 Māori died in the First World War and 649 died in the Second World War. But it is estimated that in the New Zealand wars, around 2,154 Māori died and 745 British or colonialist or kupapa soldiers died. This is a significant number. Those wars from 1845 to 72 ran for 27 years, Mr. Speaker. That is a huge part of our war history in this country. That is essential to understanding the history of New Zealand, the colonial history, and we should move ever more boldly as we recognise that part of our history to acknowledge those who died in the New Zealand wars. I just want to reflect on the nomenclature of New Zealanders because, of course, the first group of people to ever have the term New Zealander applied, whether they had sought to have it or not, were tangata whenua Māori. They were referred to as the New Zealanders. And so both in terms of time, the first New Zealanders, and in terms of nomenclature, the first New Zealanders are Māori. And it seems that this will be captured by the legislation, but I would love, Minister, if there was more explicit acknowledgement and clarification, certainly I'll put it to you in the Committee of the Whole, explicit clarification that this legislation now acknowledges those who served and died in the New Zealand wars. Mr. Speaker, war in the end serves nobody, we know that. I sometimes feel remiss at Anzac Day commemorations when there's a glorification of it, when I know the soldiers, when you read their diaries who returned from that First World War, they wanted to make sure it never happened again. And we should always remember that it is an absolute last resort to go to war, especially in the times we are in now. Mr. Speaker, thank you.
Mr. Speaker.
Well, it was very interesting with the reference of the New Zealand land wars.
Do you want me to comment?
Yes, please do.
I have no issue with what he's said at all. It's part of our history. Acknowledge it. It's part of our history.
Agreed.
Can't get away from it. Don't. There's another mistake, and I would imagine if it's not if you think about Maori and you think about how if you go to all the places I've been around this country, dozens of maraes and that sort of thing, and you go into a marae and they look back in their history, their whakapapa, and they look at they're so proud of their service, no matter where those people have served. Māori have been an incredible contributor to defence in this country. It should be acknowledged, even if that's just 27 years. He talked. The MP talked about. I would have no issue of that being included. Why can't it? If it's still in discussion, include it. There seems to be a really good bipartisan discussion going on about this whole thing.
Yeah.
So why not?
Yeah.
Put it right.
Yeah.
Put it right now.
Now, next up, Rongotai local, but not an electorate MP, Nicole McKee.
Nicole McKee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm honoured to speak in support of the Anzac Day Amendment Bill. The changes that this bill makes will allow us to formally recognise more veterans who have served New Zealand, specifically in the conflicts which have occurred since 1966, which was when the Anzac Day Act was last updated. Our day of commemoration on Anzac Day currently honours the part played by New Zealand servicemen and women in 6 specified conflicts: the First and Second World Wars, the South African Boer War, the Korean War, the war in Malaya and Borneo, and also the war in South Vietnam. And Mr. Speaker, I'm pointing to the plaques on the wall which commemorate and acknowledge. The Anzac Day Amendment Bill will allow those who have served or died in other conflicts in times of war in the past, and God forbid in our future, to also be commemorated and recognised. It serves as validation for the significant personal sacrifices that they have made, including time away from home and family, enduring difficult conditions and facing both physical and emotional challenges. Being recognised for their service is a deeply meaningful acknowledgement of their dedication, sacrifice and contributions to our country. Recognition also connects their individual contributions to something much larger, a commitment to not just duty and to honour, but to also protect others. It underscores that their role was not just about the job itself, but about the greater good to society. This recognition will also be about the legacy left behind. It means that their service will be remembered for future generations and for their families, and also for the communities that have been impacted by their service. Ultimately, recognition for service is a way of us saying, your efforts matter and we really appreciate what you have done for us. It acknowledges the courage, the commitment and the sacrifices that our servicemen and women have made. Many of us, when we get up in the early hours of Anzac Day to attend a dawn service, are doing so to honour a relative who may have served. I like to reminisce and think back to what my forefathers did to ensure that we live in a free and democratic society. I only had one grandparent growing up, Mr. Speaker. It was my maternal grandfather, and he constantly talked about the war and its effect on him and his friends. The impact this had on me surfaced when I first started shooting sports. When I started with a service rifle, I picked up the trusty old 303. I've never been interested in shooting the modern service rifle. I just wanted to use the same type of rifle that my grandfather used, and I wanted to be a part of a society that respects and commemorates in that way. The Lee Enfield is a bolt-action, magazine-fed, repeating rifle that served as the main firearm for the military forces of the British Empire and Commonwealth during the first half of the 20th century. It was a standard issue firearm to the British Army and other Commonwealth nations, including New Zealand and Australia in both the First and Second World Wars. When I'm at a range using a 303, I'm connected to that history, lest we forget. And how could we forget when we're standing in this chamber? Look around. We are surrounded by reminders of our military history. This place in which we stand was at one time dedicated as a memorial to the First World War. The carved circular wreaths around the balcony bear the names and places where significant battles were fought by New Zealand troops during World War I. And there are 18 carved plaques on the wall panels, which were added in 1961 and include later war service by New Zealand troops. How appropriate then, Mr. Speaker, surrounded by all of this history, that we now move to formally recognise those who have taken part in more recent warlike conflicts, including our peacekeeping forces. Mr. Speaker, it is my absolute honour to commend this bill to the House.
Can't argue with that.
Interesting hearing about the fact of only growing up with one grandparent.
Yeah.
That wasn't really. Oh, sorry, Rob, please.
No, go, Laura.
Yeah, okay. What got me is that we heard from the previous two speakers who kind of talked more about, the way how the Crown kind of treated veterans when they came back. Nicole didn't really address that side of things. She said, I had a grandfather, he talked about what he went through, and then I ran off to the gun range with a gun. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting. I kind of wish that she acknowledged. I kind of wanted to know more about what her grandfather went through and how he was treated after he came back from war. But, okay, if she wants to remember her grandfather through, 303, then rifle. Okay.
That's an interesting point, but she might watch the show and might be inspired to expand on the grandfather topic at Stickham Reading.
Maybe. Oh, that was very interesting what she had to say. Yeah, and just talking about the history there in the house. This is the whole thing with Anzac and these Chunnock Bear and Remembrance Day. If you don't know where you've been in history, you don't know where you are, and if you don't know where you are, you certainly don't know where you're going as a country. It's an old saying, isn't it? If you don't learn from what you've been, what New Zealanders have been doing, and at the time, it doesn't shape the future decisions very well.
Interesting about what Kiwi mentioned about grandfather being a POW. My great-grandfather, my grandma's father, was POW by Germany in World War II and was liberated by the Americans, and at the end of it got sent to the UK, and he was there for 6 months before they would allow to send him back to New Zealand. The one positive aspect that came out of that from his experience in the UK was being able to meet his cousins from Scotland. So he went up to Scotland and actually, met parts of the family he probably never ever would have met. And it's actually interesting, after World War II, he continued with logging and was still doing axe cutting until he was, I'm not sure if it's 70s or 80s. I'll have to even check with Grandma or with John, my cousin, who got the experience of having a great-grandparent in his life. And his children get the experience of having his grandmother as their great-grandmother in their life now, which is my grandma's two great-grandchildren, who are quite funny enough, are adults as well. It's quite scary that all my grandma's grandchildren and great-grandchildren are all adults now. It's quite interesting just like doing that. But yeah, it was interesting hearing the different parts, because the fact is John's 18 years older than me, got those different experiences. But it's, you hear all these things there. My grandma says if he wasn't a POW, he, instead of dying in his late 80s, he probably would have lived to his 90s or possibly 100.
Yeah.
That was something that was said. And that's echoed by grandma's mother, who died at 96. And, well, anyone knows my current grandma's 97 and her sister's 95, not far behind her.
Yeah. A lot of these people were old before they're in the World War II. I met a lot of the veterans, even people like Charles Upham and that. And I sort of seem to remember them in a bit of a different way, that they were old before their time. I think.
Yeah.
I don't know the facts around what Nicole's talking there, but she said she only had one grandfather. Remember that some of the people that went off and did the right thing and went to war were already parents. I never met either of my grandfathers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, considering...
One of them died in 43 and the other one died in 1975. I've never met them because my parents came out here. So there's that separation of countries and all that sort of thing, and I'm sure many New Zealanders have been through that too.
Yeah, I mean, that and actually, going on that basis, my grandma was damn lucky to have her father come back, considering, that was... He was her caregiver, her primary parent.
Yep.
My great-grandfather. And so grandma would have been having all of this, because this was at the same point. So my grandma was never eligible to serve in war, because she was 2 years younger than our former Queen Elizabeth II. Her husband, granddad, did serve in the war as an ambulance officer in New Caledonia. And he voluntarily enlisted, but he would have only been 20 when he enlisted, if that. Because he enlisted in there, and as a result, he went to Teachers Training College, met my grandma, who went to Teachers Training College not long after finishing secondary school, and that's where my grandparents met, and then went on both to go for that, and one of the things that a lot of World War II veterans who decided to go into teaching as a profession afterwards, they were headhunted to become school principals. And I actually found out one of the people who's a friend of mine in Wellington, I found out his grandfather, found this out yesterday from his mum, went to Teachers Training College and served alongside, was trained next to Granddad while they were both in Teachers Training College in 47 and 48. And she always remembers, that's Mr. Prankin's house there, being the one at the Manukau Primary School, as they used to drive through Levin, because her father was the deputy principal of Horowhenua College. And it's just interesting, the whole thing there. But she didn't know that my grandma later took the principal reins after Granddad retired. So it's interesting how both of them got there, but got to the top job in different ways. But there was a lot of World War II service people, young people, who, if there wasn't a war, would have, if they ended up at Teachers Training College, would have ended up there 5 years earlier.
Yeah.
Ended up at a later point. And 1947 was the biggest age variation of trainee teachers in New Zealand's Teachers College history at that point in time.
Wow, that's, okay. Yeah.
It's quite...
right. Yeah, the guys that were away and then came back.
It's quite interesting.
Yeah.
How it goes,
It's interesting. On Anzac morning, I was talking to about 6 young soldiers. And I asked, having a son myself who's 25, I asked these guys their ages, and 18, 19, and I always think back to something about 30 years ago when I met a World War II veteran that had been part of Bomber Command. And I went down to his house in Island Bay. He asked me to come over and see him, and I did. And he showed me a picture of a Lancaster bomber. And in that photo, and it's extraordinary. There's 140 young men, and then he told me something that stunned me, and that was that the oldest guy in the photograph, sitting on the wings of the planes and in the front, was 21 years old. And I was thinking about that story, and I told those young guys yesterday, and I just wonder if we had the same, we'll never have the same circumstances again, hopefully, but what would the young people of today do? What would they do? How would they respond? What would be the aftermath of them being involved in conflict? Conflict is not a nice thing.
No.
Those MPs, I'd be surprised if anyone said anything different. There's no winners, mate. No mistake about it.
Yeah. Okay, next up, as we call him, Uncle Andy, but I believe one of your former colleagues, Andy Foster.
Oh, I saw him on Anzac Day, yeah.
Andy Foster.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to carry on from the Honourable Nicole McKee and her speech. It is an absolute honour to rise to speak to this Anzac Day Amendment Bill, and to do so in this room which is surrounded by memories of conflicts past and the role that New Zealand has played in those. I want to thank the Minister for bringing this bill to the House, because this is something that New Zealand First has always stood very proudly behind our service personnel, and also very proudly behind the Anzac Day commemorations. And it's really been very, very heartwarming to see the the resurgence of interest of Kiwis of all ages in supporting our service personnel through the Anzac commemorations. Mr. Speaker, we often say, lest we forget, we say we will remember them. And this bill is about making sure that remembrance is more inclusive than it has been through the legislation as it stands at the moment. Just in terms of lest we forget, one of the things I had the privilege of doing, I guess it was a self-generated privilege of doing when I was a city councillor in Wellington, was to recognise that we had quite a number of street names which were named for people, places and events from the First World War. And as part of the World War I commemorations, the 100-year commemorations, I set out to tell those stories of those places and to recognise those streets with the poppy sign and a little bit of the story behind those. Look, we hadn't forgotten the battles, or the people remembered those, but they had forgotten the people. And in this town, the people back in 1917 had actually said, well, we want to remember some of those people who were special to us, had gone and died, but we had forgotten them many generations later. So to be able to put a sign up there and say, let's remember those individuals, was to me a really important thing to do. Mr. Speaker, this bill is all about being more inclusive. It's about recognising the conflicts since 1966. It's about recognising peacekeeping activities and UN missions where they are in dangerous situations. These are still people who are going to serve New Zealand and putting their lives on the line in risky situations. The Home Guard we've already had talked about. It's about also recognising those who've served in other forces, in allied forces as well. And for example, my wife's grandfather and his brother both served in the Second World War in the RAF, and both of them died in the RAF in active service. So those things come very, very close to home, and it is good to be able to recognise them. It's about recognising too the people who died in training activities or from sickness as well. And two other groups I particularly wanted to talk about. One is medical personnel who may well not have been military medical personnel, but who went to serve to support our service personnel. And I recognise particularly, it would be good to recognise particularly our nursing personnel who went. In the First World War we lost 16 nurses in active situation, either through illness or in one case 10 nurses who died when the Marquette was sunk in the Aegean. And of course that was there in the Aegean to support the Gallipoli, the Anzac operation. So it is absolutely right and proper that we recognise the service of, if you like, people outside of uniform or in a different uniform, our nursing personnel. And the other group I wanted to mention was the Merchant Navy. And obviously New Zealand is a trading country, and in those days that trade was particularly with the United Kingdom. And getting product to and from the United Kingdom, and that's absolutely essential to the war effort, was really, really dangerous. And something like 160 Merchant Navy personnel died in the Second World War in New Zealand colours, if you like. And I was particularly, in preparing for this, recognising some of the courage, not only to be able to sail there with the threat of being potentially torpedoed and what might happen then, but also the situation where the Otaki, which was a New Zealand shipping company, the Otaki, which was a New Zealand company ship, which actually was engaged by a German auxiliary cruiser, and it fought back, lost, but it showed the courage that our Merchant Navy personnel showed in that situation. So it is right and proper, Madam Speaker, that we have a piece of legislation which is amended to be able to recognise the courage of all of these people, and I wish to commend this bill to the House and look forward to the submissions accordingly.
Messines Road is the first thing that came to my mind when Andy said about street names.
Yep. Chater, Birdwood, they're all old generals from the First World War, and yeah, there's a lot of famous names up there.
Yep.
I wouldn't have even known that, and I know those street names in the back of Korea. I know Chater Street is the one that you don't want to drive in the bus lane, otherwise you get $150 fine. And it was the one when they first launched the 24/7 cameras. It didn't actually issue a ticket for 4 weeks.
Yep. And then, Freiburg and all these, Freiburg Street and Lyle Bay, all these different streets around, that's all from our history.
I don't know how many of you folks have been to Pahiatua, but I always smile when I see Lawson Street, because that's named after one of my my grandparents that served in World War One.
Oh, not nice.
Yeah. So it's like, oh, yay.
Yeah, that lovely little thing when you get virtually look. There's not a small town in New Zealand that I know of that I've been through that doesn't have a memorial with the people from around that area. You know, sometimes families, 2 or 3 members of the same family.
Yeah.
We've all seen them. Incredible, proud history and contribution. This people say, oh, you know, what do we really do? What effect do we? No other country in the world has contributed like this little country. Never forget it.
Yeah.
Never, ever forget it. We punch well above our weight in terms of the way, and that's why we have always been so respected and continue to be respected in our, I guess, the things of the 1990s and the 2000s that Prime Minister Clark and John Key and Mr. Boulder and have involved our people in these UN missions around the world, and I could probably name 15 at least where New Zealanders have served with distinction, absolute distinction, and got into the hearts and minds stuff and made a huge difference to those people's lives. Every continent of the world, bar Antarctica, I think. So fantastic. He speaks faster than when he was on council. Or is that just the speed of the tape?
No, we've got it at 1.5 times so we can get through more footage.
I was going to say, if we had that at every council meeting, we'd get through the meetings even quicker.
Here's one that I thinking about. I would say someone does clean them. I'm not sure if it'll be the local council that does it or if it's some volunteer. But yes, someone definitely goes and looks after our memorials.
Oh, they do. Usually the local councils do that. But there's also Major Simon Strombaum leads a group of people or is involved with a group of people through the RSA where they go and clean up all the old war graves and all that sort of thing. They do an incredible job. I'm just trying to remember the name of the group, but I could almost Google it while we're sitting here.
Yeah.
But, they go and do all that sort of stuff. So that's important that that's done. Very important.
Okay, let's get to our youngest MP, Hana Rafiti Maiki Clark.
Tēnā rā koe te pika o te rā, tēnā rā tātou e te whare. E tuana hau ki te wahai ngā kōrero mō te Pāti Māori i te rangi nei, nōku te honore ki te tuku kōrero ki te tū ki tēnei kaupapa whakahirahira. Hei reo ofa, hei reo pākiri, hei reo whakataunaki i ngā hoia katoa o te motu. Kei ngā i ka āwhiro, te pai o tūmatauenga, ngā waiwai kaipakiaka o te whawhai mō Aotearoa New Tireni, nei ka whakamānawa i a koutou, rire hau, pai mariri. On behalf of Te Pāti Māori, we support this bill and this kaupapa. Madam Speaker, we understand that this bill amends the Anzac Day Act 1966 to recognise those who served in more recent conflicts but who are not currently recognised nor provided for following Anzac. Many wars and conflicts have occurred since then and are still ongoing. Māori make up a large proportion of those serving in the Defence Force, and Te Pāti Māori stands with you and all those who served before, after and alongside you. They might be your brother, your father, your mother or your sister. They walk among us and they carry the experience of conflict without due recognition. The effect of the world wars on Māori has been decimated pai across the country, stripping Te Ao Māori of its means of cultural survival and favour. Te Pāti Māori supports formal recognition of veterans for more recent conflicts, including those involved in peacekeeping, to provide it under the Act. Many of our people, especially those in Defence Force, are so humble that in times like this we must advocate for them in the way that they require. The late Tarbom advocated for similar recognition of the Māori Battalion, including through the tribunal. We must heed these lessons of history and avoid repeating the same failed mistakes of the past. As I look around this house and as I look around the room, I can see all of the reefs. And I think of my tupuna who served in World War II, my tupuna Peter Tautahi, who was in the Māori Battalion, and also my tupuna Duncan McNichol, who served in World War I. However, it does bring huge mamai that there's nothing in this House that recognises the Māori land wars, Te Pūtake o Te Riri. Te Pāti Māori brings this conversation of our tupuna, and I would like to thank the Green Party and the Labour Party for recognising and acknowledging our tupuna who had fought in the New Zealand land wars. Te Pūtake o Te Riri, Rangiriri o Haiwai, Puke Hina Hina, Rangi Awhia, and many more who still only recently being acknowledged from this House, like recently in the Ōrākau battle site reading, where that was the petition of the Homaihera, bring us a recognition date for the land wars that occurred here on our own soil of Aotearoa. This bill must be brought forward to ensure that this country remains in keeping its promise of our past, present and future to the service of women and men. We honour that recently Willie Apiata VC and the Minister, with the hope that the Minister truly understands the mana of such an undertaking and appropriate tikanga e te minita e wewera ana tō pūkoro I te mana o ngā whakahau kua taupokina ki runga ki a koe. Ko te manuka kua takoto, kua kawea kia mau ki te kupu, mana te kupu, tapu te kupu, tēnā rā koutou e te whare.
Well, that was... I don't know, how do you say it? And it's very interesting to see it coming from one of our youngest MPs' perspectives.
Yep.
It's we're definitely getting a very good wide brush of what's it called? Of the generations.
Yep. But they're all saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's important.
Look, and that's important. Acknowledge your history, no matter what it is, and get on with looking after your veterans and their families. That's what's important.
Yeah. Let's get on to Tim van der Molen. Now, this will be interesting. He's chair of the select committee it's been referred to.
I call him Tim van der Molen. Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's an honour to rise and take a call on this bill today, and I'd like to start by acknowledging all past and present New Zealand Defence personnel for their service they have provided to New Zealand, through the challenges they may present, the opportunities that brings, the friendship, the camaraderie, the skills, and ultimately the service upholding the values and freedoms that we hold so dear in New Zealand. Now, Madam Speaker, this bill today actually formalises a lot of what happens around the country, and I take great pride in attending Anzac services around the Waikato every year, get to as many as I can, and you can see out in our communities that there is a strong sense of the importance of attending those services, of remembering the service, the sacrifice that has been made, and whether that was quite some time ago or quite recently. And so I think in that context it's encouraging to feel that formal recognition is already occurring in our communities, and yet today we are now formalising that through legislation, as well we should. And we've heard a bit about some of the plaques around Parliament as well, and indeed World War I is clearly recognised, World War II and beyond, but more modern plaques as well with Timor-Leste and Afghanistan, noting indeed already in this House we have those plaques and appreciate that service that was made, but this legislation will now formalise that to bring it more into line with where we are. And it's an important step, because although this is already largely happening, actually it is really important that the government of the day, that this Parliament shows a clear sign of appreciation for what has been done on its behalf by the brave men and women that have put on the uniform. And so that formal acknowledgement is really important, not just for those personnel that have served recently, but indeed for any personnel that have served or died in training incidents as well. That's an important one that I think we need to pick up on, because it is critical when you are training in the Defence Force that you train in as realistic scenarios as possible. And of course that comes with an inherent level of risk, and sadly there have been instances where lives have been lost in that training or in different training scenarios. And so of course we should acknowledge those personnel too. But the other thing I wanted to pick up on from the Minister's speech was acknowledging, going right back to the definition of Anzac Day, in terms of acknowledging not just UK, Australian and New Zealand forces, but actually expanding that to acknowledge other countries that were represented and contributed through that endeavour as well. And India in particular is one I've had some conversations about quite recently. And so it's I think, very fitting and appropriate that we are now acknowledging those soldiers that served during that time as well. So, Madam Speaker, I am very pleased that we are now able to formalise this. I have the privilege of chairing the Foreign Affairs, Defence and Trade Committee, and so I look forward to our committee's consideration of this bill, and I would encourage anyone who has an interest in the bill, the detail of it, or potentially proposing some amendments or suggestions, to take the time to submit through that process, and to enable myself and my colleagues on the committee to consider that, to ensure that we are getting this piece of legislation in the best state possible to appropriately reflect and honour those service personnel. So, Madam Speaker, I think that basically covers where we're at. A great progression, building on, I think, what's been a growing momentum of work in terms of acknowledging veteran service. We've heard around some of the other work that's been considered by the Minister that hopefully will come to this House in due course, and indeed the collaborative comments from the opposition in terms of their desire to support this appropriately as well. So I'm very encouraged by that, and I think it's a fitting time as well when we think of not just those that have been before, but indeed those who continue to serve in a time of increasing uncertainty around the globe. There is never a time when we are safe, when peace is perpetual. We must continue to stand up for those values, for those freedoms, and always be ready to serve this country. And I just want to end again on acknowledging those that have done that, because it is very important for all of us, lest we forget.
No disagreements from me.
No,
I'm
not
gonna,
default.
Sam, I'm going to make a prediction. I would say that this bill will get 100% support through the House. I don't think there'll be a dissenting vote. That's what I'm going to put $10 on it.
You've already read the Hansard?
No.
Because it did pass unanimously.
No, it's just good to hear them all, behind and it just shows you, at the end of the day, we're all Kiwis.
The interesting part will it have 100% positive support at the select committee process?
I think so.
Yeah.
Well, there might be a couple of that little. I just those two earlier speakers were talking about that acknowledgement of the Māori Wars, or the colonial wars. I can't think of a reason why you'd leave that out of our history. It just, and I don't even want to get into a debate. It's part of our history. Put it in there. Put it in there. I mean, you're talking about people that have gone. They're not in this world anymore. They might be in heaven or somewhere else. You're just talking about an acknowledgement of that. Are we not?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, it's great. It's great to see people. Yeah.
There's also keeping in mind what Anzac Day is about. It's a memorial.
Yeah,
it's a day of remembrance. So
exactly.
Yeah. So yes, of course, you should include it.
Yeah.
Okay. Next up, Helen White.
I call Helen White. This is a bill that expands the people that we honour and remember and are grateful for on Anzac Day, and it's going to expand to persons serving in warlike conflict if they serve in response to an armed conflict that has occurred, is occurring, or may occur or reoccur. I wanted to start, and I've never done this before, but start with a poem. It's from Sassoon, and it was from the First World War, and I picked it because I find him a poet who is very unsentimental in his view of war, but also because I think that the sentiment in it is one that really we need to look at the people that we hope to include under this bill and look at what the reality of what they're doing is. And so, although it's about World War I think it draws a really good link. It's called Attack, and it says, "At dawn the ridge emerges, massed and done, in the wild purple of the glowing sun, smouldering through spouts of drifting smoke that shroud the menacing scarred slope, and one by one tanks creep and topple forward to the wire. The barrage roars and lifts, then clumsily bowed, with bombs and guns and shovels and battle gear, men jostle and climb to meet the bristling fire, lines of grey, muttering faces, masked with fear. They leave their trenches, going over the top, while time ticks blank and busy on their wrists, and hope with furtive eyes and grappling fists flounders in the mud. Oh, Jesu, make it stop." It's an incredibly great honour to speak in this House on something as serious as the commitment that people make to our armed services and the risks that they take. One of the people who will be covered in this act is Private Leonard Manning, who fought in a peacekeeping mission. There was an ambush while on that mission, and he faced the same fear and was as brave and made his greatest sacrifice as the person and the people they're referred to in the poem I've just read. He deserves our gratitude and our respect, and we need to remember the fear that he would have been in at that time. We have an incredibly proud record of peacekeeping in this country. In 1945, the UN was created, and New Zealand was a founding member of that. Since then, we've had our greatest contingent in Afghanistan, in the Bamyan province. We've been active in Sinai in 1981, Yugoslavia in 1993, Somalia in 1992, Bougainville and East Timor from 1989 to 1997. In East Timor, we lost Private Manning in the incident that was an ambush. In the Solomons, we were active between 1998 and 2003. In all these situations, our peacekeepers have made a very real difference to the peace of our world, and their work's not done. It will continue. We do live in extremely uncertain times where the humanity that they bring to their role will be much to the betterment of the work they do to hopefully stabilise what's an unstable situation. Finally, I just want to turn to my own area of Mount Albert because I have this wonderful RSC in it. It's the Goulden RSC, and on Anzac Day, I run from service to service in my area, and this little Goulden RSC is one of the most wonderful environments. It has an incredible little service. It's very sparky, and it's called an RSC, not an RSA, because it includes the merchant shipman, and it did so at a very early time. So everybody who's spoken in this house about how we've already moved on in New Zealand from really just we are including more people, that little RSC has done that job for a long time in our community. And I always think when I'm in that particular place of the people around me and who would be missing in that community as a result of war. And I know that it's very real for my electorate. In Mount Albert, I have Mount Albert Grammar, where so many of our people died, and I honour them. Thank you.
Okay. I don't know what else to say.
My bet's looking pretty good.
Yeah.
100%. 100%.
I do like this question from Not Bernadette.
Oh, I know the answer to that question. They're not in season. And also, the frosts tend to kill poppies.
What time of year are they in season?
Summer.
Oh, so
Yeah,
we
too late.
when we celebrate, it's just way out of whack too.
That would be part of it, and the tradition is that the Poppy Day is about a week before Anzac Day, and it's about, they sell the poppies, of course. Well, not sell them, but they get donations from people. I would imagine, I've seen variations, everything from metal to like the paper one that I'm wearing to some women have done some amazing work with crochet and done the same thing. I saw one on Anzac Day. This will get you, Sam. This little boy was wearing one. He was really proud of it, and it was made of Lego.
Oh,
Lego. So there you go. So you got Lego.
That's cool.
We've got. I've seen glass ones. I've seen metal ones. Old bits of metal done into them, paper. But I would imagine that all came about because if you had fresh ones, they'd probably be like most flowers, wilted after a week, and it'll look pretty sad. I think it's it's a good question.
now we're going to change the next speaker's name to add his rank. We've got Wing Commander Tim Costley.
Oh,
Madam Speaker, in 3 weeks' time, our nation will stand in silence at dawn, and we'll remember all of those who have served our country in conflicts around the world. On Anzac Day, as I stand and I hear the last post and observe the minute's silence, hopefully with a helicopter fly past approaching, invariably in my mind drifts back 15 years ago. And to my friends, all of whom served overseas, but were killed in 2010 in accidents in New Zealand. I think of Nick Cree and Hayden Madsen, Ben Carson and Dan Gregory. Wow. That experience of Anzac Day may be my reality, it may be the reality for many. But the law currently states that only those who served up until the war in South Vietnam are officially recognised. Many who served before me and all those who served alongside me are not. Now, there is a tension here, and if I'm really honest, I always feel a little inadequate on Anzac Day as I stand there in my medals and I reflect on my grandfathers, both of their war service, and think what they would have gone through. How can I compare my service in Afghanistan or peacekeeping missions around the world to what they must have endured? But then I'm reminded of Leonard Manning. Last year I made the trek across Timor-Leste, up the hill and then through the bush to the place where he was ambushed and where he lost his life in action. I'm reminded of Leon Smith, who lost his life in Afghanistan in action a month after earning his New Zealand Gallantry Decoration, trying to save the life of his SAS comrade, Dougie Grant, under fire. I think of those New Zealanders who lost their life in action in Afghanistan, like Tim O'Donnell, like Prowley Dura, Rory Malone, NZGM, Luke Tamatea, Jacinda Baker, and Richard Harris. I think of John McNutt, who lost his life in Kuwait. I think of Richard Absalom, who lost his life in the Falklands War. And in fact, I'm wearing his school tie today. And I think of those Kiwis who lost their lives on these operations, but not in action, like in East Timor, Tony Walter, William White, Boyd Atkins, Dean Johnson. In Afghanistan, Cliff Miller and Dougie Hughes. And we must remember them all. The same Anzac spirit that saw 100,000 Kiwis march off to Europe in 1914, that spirit lives on in the women and the men who serve New Zealand today. In them we see the same willingness to serve, to put on their uniform each day, to do whatever their country may ask of them, to go wherever their country and where this house may ask them to go. And wherever they serve in the world, wherever they may serve in the world, the very essence of service and sacrifice endures. The scale of loss may appear smaller, but the significance of the loss is no less, particularly to those families who forever bear the scars. That is why we must support this bill. The words in it may be small, but they are significant, as they honour all of those who have served and those who laid down their lives in conflict around the world. Now, I will forever be proud to have served and immensely proud of those I served alongside. But I will always be in awe of those who went before me, and particularly of those who never returned home. Ka maumahara tonu tātou ki rātou, lest we forget.
And I just was reading literally things that he was saying on there on his Wikipedia page through his service.
Yeah. Yeah, Wing Commander. Yeah. Yeah. I know a lot of the names he's talking about there. I know the boys who brought Leonard Manning home. There were some of the young guys that I trained that had that unfortunate duty to go and bring him home from Timor-Leste. Yeah, and Dougie Grant, we were just talking about him not 2 weeks ago. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. But, yeah, see, we've just about got through the whole house now with every party.
Oh, yes, we'll go to Phil Twyford's speech next.
I'm just waiting for the speaker to just finish them all off and say, my job's done, I've got you all to agree. So,
we'll do Phil Twyford's and then we'll get to the vote.
All
right. That was an excellent speech by Tim Costley, and I just want to acknowledge what a great contribution that was to this debate. Like I think all members in this House, I have so many images in my mind about Anzac Days over the years, at the smell of gunpowder at Waikimete Cemetery at 6 in the morning. Every year, the Te Atatu, Swanson and Henderson RSAs with their services. And Anzac Day always provokes in me a lot of reflection and thought about how I feel about war and peace. All of my political life, I've been a critic of the many imperialist wars and foreign adventures that this country and others have taken part in. It's been part of my kind of political journey through life. For a couple of hundred years, my ancestors were on the wrong side of every British imperialist conflict you could imagine, from Waterloo to Crimea, the suppression of the Indian Mutiny, the Boer War, World War I. I have an uncle who was shot escaping from a Japanese prisoner of war camp, building the Death Railway through Thailand in World War II. The Vietnam War, or the American War as the Vietnamese call it, was one of the great political events that shaped the views of generations around the world, including here in New Zealand. And for me, I marched and opposed and organised against the Bush-Blair invasion of Iraq, and I'm a member of a party that has a proud tradition of opposing unjust foreign wars. But I'm not a pacifist. Hitler had to be stopped in World War II. Putin should be stopped in Ukraine. I supported the New Zealand Defence Forces being deployed in Timor-Leste and in the Solomon Islands and Bougainville in the Pacific. And I recognise that if you want to be able to defend your nation, and if you want to be able to put an armed force into the field to defend the things that you hold dear, then you have to take that very seriously, and you must make an unqualified commitment to support and to respect and to honour the people who put on the uniform and put their lives at risk in defence of the nation. And Gallipoli, which God knows was the most ill-conceived fiasco, where so many young New Zealanders and Australians were needlessly slaughtered because of the stupidity and incompetence of the British officer class. It stands in history as one of the supreme examples of the needless carnage of war. We still rightly remember and honour the people who served there and who gave their lives. And I remember one of my constituents who was a Gallipoli veteran who I met in my first campaign door knocking in my electorate, who was a regular at the Henderson RSA. And I was amazed that this guy was still there, who had fought as a youngster in Gallipoli, was still there only a little over a decade ago. It's very important that that we recognise that the supreme contribution that people make when they serve in the armed forces. They don't get to choose the conflict that they serve in. They make an unqualified commitment to serve their country, and they do so really subject to the decision making that happens in this House, in this Parliament, and by the government of the day. And it's right and appropriate that this bill we're considering in the House today modernises the way that Anzac Day recognises the contribution of our defence personnel across numerous different conflicts and numerous different ways of serving. And I also want to say I support colleagues both from Labour, the Greens and Te Pāti Māori on their call for the New Zealand Wars to be considered properly as well.
Madam Speaker.
Carlos.
I think that's definitely something we might need to put in submissions, is to add the New Zealand Wars to be recognised as part of the Act.
I'm just glad that I'll finish off on this. I'm just glad that veterans are not being used as a political football, because nothing would make my blood boil more than seeing people who have served, who've gone through a lot of trauma, a lot of stress in their lives, whose families have also gone through a lot of stress, be thrown around like a political football. And I'm glad that this Parliament has the sense to not do that.
Yeah. On just that issue alone, I just, as I said, I've been to many, many parts of the country where Māori are so proud of all what they whakapapa back to. And that is, in our short history of 200 years nearly, I think that's an important part that needs to be acknowledged, and I'd like to see that acknowledged, just from a humanity perspective, I guess. I think that's really important. There was a really little interesting question while that was going on across the bottom. They all seem to agree. What's wrong? Something must be wrong. No, not necessarily. It's good. Unity.
Yeah, it's probably one of the few times we have quite a strong consensus in Parliament.
Yeah, because it affects so many people. There would be very few people living in this country, I would imagine, that either haven't come from a war-torn nation, or who have been here or born into this country, who don't have some relative that has served or been connected with defence. I struggle to find someone, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay, let's see the vote.
On this bill for the reverence demonstrated today, the question is that the motion be agreed to. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it.
Anzac Day Amendment Bill, first reading.
The question is that the Anzac Day Amendment Bill be considered by the Foreign Affairs, Defence and Trade Committee. Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. I call on government order of the...
Well, didn't even need a call party vote. 123 votes in favour, 0 opposed.
Wow, cool. That's great. All right, what does that translate to? Just acknowledgement of a special day in our history, commemorative day, acknowledging the service of people, I think. In the many, I think the second to last speaker, there's just the many different facets of the way defence people serve, warlike, non-warlike, but around stuff that's occurring in the world. And we should be very proud of our history. So, great. Quite reflective.
Yeah. Now, this is something... now, before we move on, now it's... what's annoying is when... it's the way Google Earth has...
What are you looking for, Sam?
No, you can't see.
What are you looking for, Sam? Come on.
Oh, it's down the road from Laura's place, known as Anzac Bridge.
Oh, okay. You're going to my neck of the woods.
Oh, we're talking Hawke's Bay.
Oh, no. Taurua.
Yep.
Where?
It's just south of Ekatahuna before you get up Mount Bruce.
Northern Wairarapa, southern, very, very southern Hawke's Bay. Am I right? It's on the western side of what is it? Highway 5.
It's the
two.
Yeah, so it's the bit in between Hawke's Bay and the Wairarapa.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Passed it a
something
few
that's
weeks ago.
always like. I remember my first time going past it when I did the 50-mile walk, which was. Now, I was part of 49 Squadron for ATC, but it was, I think it's 22 Squadron, which I think is the one that's in Masterton, had an annual event doing the 50-mile walk from Woodville to Masterton. And it will get done we'll start at 6 p.m. on a Friday night and walk right through to about 6 p.m. on the Saturday.
Wow.
Yeah, and I remember the first time walking through there, even though I've got this weird feeling when I head south out of Ekatahuna, my brain wants to think I'm heading north. I don't know why, but it just does that.
That's okay.
Yeah. So I thought that was something worth sharing. Okay, so we'll get to our next bill, which is Cal Bates members' bill of the... Now, I'll click on the link because it will... so there's a bit more explanation of what it is. So the Jury Age of Excusal Amendment Bill. The purpose of the bill is to increase the age at which the registrar has the discretion and duty to excuse a person summoned to attend jury service. Currently, under the Act, you can be excused from jury service for simply being over the age of 65. It is meant to be getting, so this is to lift it up to 72, which is quite interesting considering the mandatory retirement age for a judge is 70. So if you're a judge, you will get, you might get an extra 2 years from being retired as a judge of you could be called up for jury service. Okay, so let's kick it off with Cal Bates on his member speech, or as I think another show has been said there, Ira Goldstein's son.
15 votes against.
Act New Zealand.
11 votes in favour.
New Zealand first.
8 votes in favour.
To consider the bill.
Comments.
Mr. Speaker, it is a privilege to rise in support of this bill, the Jury's Age of Excusal Amendment Bill, which proposes a simple but meaningful change to increase the age at which New Zealanders may request automatic excusal from jury duty from 65 to 72. This is a targeted amendment to the Juries Act 1981, but one that carries wider implications for fairness, civic participation and the evolving demographics of our country. At present, any person aged 65 or over may ask to be excused from jury duty, either for that specific summons or permanently, and that request is automatically granted. This may have been appropriate several decades ago, but it no longer reflects the reality of life today. Kiwis are living longer, staying healthier, and continuing to contribute meaningfully to society well past the age of 65. In fact, I need no look further than my own mum. She's past that age, though I should add she certainly doesn't look it. And she's still working, still active, still capable, and still eager to contribute. The current law sends the wrong message, that once you turn 65, your civic responsibility ends, that there is no longer an expectation that you contribute to the judicial system or share the burden of justice with your fellow citizens. That's not the message that we should be sending. We also know that it has practical effects. With so many automatic excusals from age 65, courts must issue more summonses just to fill the jury pool. That is an inefficient use of our administrative resources. It is time, Mr. Speaker, that we updated the law. The choice of 72 was not made lightly. A number of potential thresholds were considered, and I expect and encourage the Justice Committee to consider this question in depth. The age of 72 reflects a considered and balanced approach. In New Zealand, judges must retire at 70 under the Senior Courts Act 2016, but may serve further on limited-term contracts up to the age of 75. That acknowledges their continued capacity while still maintaining boundaries. Most relevant to the proposal in this bill is the retirement age of the Ombudsman, which is set at 72. That informs the drafting of the bill. It is an example of a public-facing role that values and places value on experience, maturity and sound judgment, qualities that are also vital in a jury. Internationally, though, there is a spectrum of age exemptions. In England and Wales, 76 is the upper limit for jury service, with those over 70 being able to seek excusal. In Scotland, people over the age of 71 may be excused upon request. In Australia, 5 states and territories allow those aged 70 or over to permit
permanent excusal. I feel like I've got my nana or granddad opposite me at the moment trying to use their cell phone. Victoria, Queensland, South Australia, and the Northern Territory all allow those over the age of 70 to seek excusal on a permanent basis. Western Australia takes a stricter approach, Mr. Speaker. Those over the age of 75 are simply ineligible. In the United States, some states, such as Hawaii, South Dakota, and Maine, allow excusal from jury duty at the age of 80. So the age of 72 places us in the middle of a reasonable and global spectrum. It reinforces civic participation without placing undue expectation on our seniors, such as those who have just left the House. Let me be clear, Mr. Speaker, this bill does not compel anyone over the age of 65 to serve. It simply lifts the age of automatic excusal, preserving the ability for any individual to still request an exemption if they have a valid reason. Mr. Speaker, the proposal did not originate from an academic paper. It came from the front lines of our justice system. In October 2024, I visited the Auckland High Court with the Minister of Justice, the Honourable Paul Goldsmith. During that visit, Ministry of Justice staff raised the issue directly. The volume of excusals of those over the age of 65 was placing strain on registrars and making it harder to fill the jury benches. It is, Mr. Speaker, a practical, sensible suggestion that they made, one that stuck with me and led directly to this bill. Mr. Speaker, the bill makes a single targeted change, amending sections 15 and 15A of the Juries Act 1981 to lift the age at which the registrar must excuse a person on request from 65 to 72. Anyone aged 72 or older will still be able to request an excusal, either for that particular summons or on a permanent basis. The expected benefits, Mr. Speaker, are twofold. Firstly, it broadens the pool of jurors. Including New Zealanders aged 65 to 72 adds valuable life experience, insight and maturity to our jury benches. Second, it reduces the strain on court administration. Around 47% of excusals are currently granted purely based on the age of the applicant. Even a modest reduction in that number would represent a meaningful improvement in court operations. It is a small but practical change, part of a broader effort to restore confidence in law and order in this country. As a Member of Parliament for Wanganui, including Wanganui, South Taranaki and Stratford, I regularly meet with constituents over the age of 65 who are still working, volunteering, running organisations and making an impact. Their contributions, Mr. Speaker, are extraordinary. And this bill says to them, we see you, we value you, and we trust you to play your part in one of the most important civic duties there is, and that is jury service. I want to take a moment to acknowledge the hard-working Justice Select Committee, who hopefully, following a vote in this House, will take this bill forward. I am confident, Mr. Speaker, that they will bring their usual rigour, insight and care to examining this piece of legislation. While other issues have also been raised with me regarding our jury system and jury duty, Mr. Speaker, and there have been a number through this process that constituents, that people who have heard about this bill since it was pulled from the biscuit tin, Mr. Speaker, have raised with me, this bill itself has a very narrow scope, simply reviewing the age of automatic excusal. It is a focused reform, and the committee's work will be vital in refining it further and, as I said, Mr. Speaker, exploring that exact age that would be appropriate in a New Zealand context today. Mr. Speaker, this is a simple change, a change that reflects the evolving realities of New Zealand society. It updates our laws to match our demographics. It honours the role that mature Kiwis still play, and it strengthens the fairness and representativeness of our jury system. I urge all members of this House to support the first reading of the Juries Age of Excusal Amendment Bill. Let us recognise the changing face of our nation. Let us share the responsibility of justice, and let us send a message that every generation, Mr. Speaker, including those over the age of 65, has a role to play in upholding the law. Mr. Speaker, I commend the Juries Age of Excusal Amendment Bill to the House.
It's actually interesting, that one, because neither of my grandparents ever got summons for jury service in their whole time, and I know Grandma did say to me, she would have been happily served on a jury until she was about 88.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm of the opinion that, you know, if you're old enough to vote, really jury service should be optional. I don't believe in forcing people into doing jury service. But then again, I'm a libertarian, so that's just my political stance on things. Is I don't like using force. I would prefer to have an option where people can say, yep, I'd like to opt into this and I'd like to be considered as part of a pool. But if people don't want to be a part of that, I would like to have that be an option as well, regardless of for whatever reason. I would like to see more freedoms around this.
Well, count yourself lucky. Where you live, you're less likely to get called up for a jury.
That is true, yes.
Yeah, because a lot of that is based on location. Like I've been called up for jury service, but that's only when I've lived in Wellington. I never got called up for jury service when I was living in the Otaki electorate. My mum never got called up for jury service while living in the electorate, same with Dad, whereas my mum got called up for jury service when she was enrolled in what would have been the Porirua electorate back in the day, when she's still on the electoral roll, was living in Tawa, even though she had moved out of home. It's an interesting one of like, well, where do you draw that line? But I agree with the fact of like, you've got to have a line, and sometimes, automatic excusals does clog up paperwork because, if as from what's been said there, 47% of automatic excusals were solely related around age. That means how many other people lower down the chain who potentially have full-time jobs and that sort of thing have to fill that gap.
I'm a pensioner, Sam, but I'm still well capable of serving on a jury. I'd be happy to. I still work, of course, actively. And that point about the demographic, we're living in a country where we've got an ageing population. So the pool, when you look at it and you think of the people who can't serve on a jury by virtue of their jobs, i.e. police officers,
court staff,
police officers,
members of parliament,
court staff, all the people who can't serve, and we've got I guess the way I look at it is it's a great resource of people who are experienced in life itself and have probably been through all the trips and tribulations with families and everything like that. I think they bring a certain sort of wisdom and maturity to decisions. The trouble is, the older you get, the more people you know. And the last time I got seriously, the last time I went for jury service, I got called up, and there was a young man on trial. Well, I knew the district court judge, I knew his brother, and I'd prosecuted in the court of his father, and I got elected as the foreman of the jury. I said to the court attendant, I said, I think you better go out and see the judge and tell him that I need to talk to him about a potential conflict of interest. And he said, thank you very much for being upfront about it so that we've got a clean process. Some people could construe that as a conflict of interest. In the fact that you just that entire family from the judiciary. They're all some very famous names there. But I'm just saying, but I'd be more than happy to do my duty, and I'm sure, and it is a duty, and you've got to maintain the integrity of the system. So I don't think New Zealanders.
If you're in the armed forces, can you be summoned for civil jury service if you're an active service person?
Absolutely. I'm pretty sure. Well, I don't think there's an exemption there for being unless you're away.
If you're overseas, that's a different story.
The practicalities of relocating from someone from halfway around the world would be just ridiculous.
I mean.
But if you're here, no, I don't think you're exempt as a member of the armed forces.
You're correct, Rob. You can be called up for jury service if you're serving in the military. Yes.
Because also you can be called up for military justice panels as well. But I don't know how often we do those in New Zealand.
A lot. We do court martials and all that sort of thing. We do. Yeah. I don't know how many elect jury trial it's. If I remember military justice pretty well, it was March the guilty bastard in. But military justice is quite different from it's swift, and it's usually pretty menial stuff. Anything more serious goes to the outside courts, usually the civil courts.
Okay, let's see what Duncan Webb's speech is.
congratulate the member who's in charge of this bill for speaking for 10 minutes on a bill which does nothing more than raise the age of excusal from 65 to 72. It's not a bad bill. I'll put you out of your misery. We're going to support it. But of all the ways in which we could make New Zealand better, this member has chosen to raise the age at which someone can tap out of jury service. That's it. Well, you have another bill in the ballot. I hope you can do something a little more ambitious next time. But if we actually want, juries are important. Juries are important because it's the idea that ultimately, if we're in trouble with the law, we're judged by our peers. One of the important things about juries is that they're representative. So I'm absolutely fine with people up to 72 being compelled to be summoned for jury service. But I tell you what, if we really want to have a representative jury, we probably should look at the $31 a half day that they're paid. Because if you've got to take a day off work, $31 a half day doesn't cut it. Or you could look at the fact that childcare is capped at $80 a day. If you want mums and dads to come along and serve on juries, and we do, we want to have a look at that as well and ensure that actual costs of childcare are covered and not just a token amount. Or even as much as providing lunch. So if you get to serve on a jury and it goes over lunch, you've got to bring your own lunch. Now, there's some pretty simple fixes, because the danger is, and we know this from juries, I've been in courts and seen juries selected, people who serve on juries are skewed towards people with spare time. People to whom it's interesting and they haven't got a job to hold down, or, a child that needs attention and can't be put in care. So we do actually already have a skew towards older people who have got time on their hand. So, yep, we're very happy for this bill to go through. I'm pretty sure it'll get through the House. It probably won't trouble the Justice Committee for too long either. But, if we're going to have juries that are truly representative from all sections of community, not just those that can take a few days off, we really need to address the wider questions in juries as well. And that's a job that I'd encourage the government to do. Kia ora.
That's actually a good point about the $31 per half day for the cost, to jury service, because that has not changed in years. But the part that actually will make you cringe, if you're receiving a benefit, you have to declare that and have your benefit abated for that $31.
No, you're kidding me.
No, it is in that, even that the income is tax exempt.
That's why I kind of stated earlier, is I would kind of like to have jury service be an optional thing, just in case people have conflicts like that. But I don't have anything ironed out or anything, like a big proposal I could bring to Parliament or anything like that. But it's just something that could potentially be there in the future for consideration.
Yeah.
It should be.
But I don't know, what do you change the rate of jury service? A living wage? Because isn't your employer meant to top up your wages for jury service? I don't know the whole ins and outs, but if you're actually paid a living wage for it, then it means your employer doesn't have to quite foot the bill as much.
Not entirely sure, but that would be a good suggestion, yes.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately it's not a finance bill, but that could be something we could check and go outside the bill. But here's a great part to add, is considering I often do on LTP submissions.
At the end of the day, how many jury trials are there each year in the system? There can't be that many. That can't be that big a cost where you're looking at compensating people. What price do you put on that? What price do you put on good justice where, $31 a day, you don't get lunch? Hey? Seriously? I'd be interested to see the last time that was reviewed. If you go on today's shopping prices, what's that, a block of cheese and a block of butter?
What's the price of a kg of tasty cheese?
What price is justice?
1 kg tasty.
Yeah. We want good panels of people, sitting on a cross section of New Zealanders sitting on those things, so that justice is important.
The last thing we want is rush to jury, going, I'm not getting paid very much for this, I'm just going to rush through it all. It's
it's 1.5 blocks of 1 kg tasty cheese. That's how much your jury services work.
That's it. That's what you get for a day.
1.5 blocks of cheese.
That's just not acceptable. How many coffees is that?
How many
Sam?
coffees?
How many-
What size coffee are we doing? Are we doing a large one at Newtown Market prices?
caramel lattes. How many?
So and what size are we doing the caramel latte? And I'll work it out. Large.
Yeah,
Okay, so that will be $8. So 31 divided by 8 would be 3.875. Or for rounding, we'll say 4 caramel bit lattes from Bean here. Unfortunately, on Saturday, the courts aren't open.
I'm not going to lie, I would do jury service for free coffee.
I think there's free instant, but you never know. I mean, they could have improved things.
No, not instant. No.
No, I know. It's like a literal crime to sit there and say that.
3.8 lattes. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a small price to pay.
Yeah. Or if we sit there and have to put alternative milk like myself and Laura have to have, it would only be free.
Yeah. Free coffee all day. And they get a meal.
Yeah. Now we're talking.
Yeah. Thanks, Dave, for that comment.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get to another former one of Rob's colleagues, Celia Wade-Brown.
I agree with some of the points that have been made by the mover of this bill. I've served on juries a couple of times. It's quite a tough experience. And I've also been excused once or twice. I felt the role of being a mayor leading the long-term plan probably was a reasonable excuse, and they agreed. So I also appreciate the fact that experience, life experience, and age is no barrier. We already have no maximum age for serving on a jury, and I think that's great. It's quite interesting, if I heard the member opposite correctly, that you can't be on a US jury over 75. One could think they might be able to apply that a little bit more generally to important public roles. But I like the idea that there should be no upper limits. Obviously, I like the idea that there should be no upper limits. But which generation is underrepresented in juries? Is it the greyer generation that is underrepresented in juries? I don't think so. My colleague from Labour made some excellent points about the fairly shabby remuneration for jury service and the difficulties of childcare, and in fact the sheer unpredictability of how long one's jury service might go on. Now, it doesn't seem to me to have strong evidence as to whether it should be 65, 72, 103, whether there should be automatic right of refusal, if you like, at any particular age. But given our retirement age is 65, unless the member was suggesting that also moved to 72, then why not pick an age that we already have generally accepted by the general population? I personally think that the Ombudsman and District Court judge ages and so on of 72, I think that's a bit young. I think there's plenty of people who are capable of contributing well past that. Not that I'm there yet. I note that, as far as I know, Grey Power doesn't have a specific position on an official position on this issue, but generally feel that retirees should be able to recuse themselves from jury duty. So it's not the worst bill in the universe, but is it really the best use of our time for governance? Should we be sending it to Select Committee without a really clear case for the time and energy to be engaged in this? At this stage, we say we will not be supporting.
Palmer.
This is why I like Celia Wade-Brown. She is my local MP. Yeah, she's as witty as that in person as well.
Now, was Celia like that in her councillor days before she became a mayor?
Yeah, she's always had a good sense of humour.
The part I still can't figure out is how the hell did her and Ian McKinnon be the perfect match of the mayor deputy mayor team? That's one that's kind of stunned me.
Oh, they were a good match. Ian was always, Ian was one of those guys. Yeah, I thought he was a good choice, to be honest.
He raves about his days as deputy mayor under Celia. He always raves about it and speaks very positively.
Yeah, but Ian's one of those guys. I mean, he came from an amazing family. You know, Don McKinnon, John McKinnon, him. His father was a general. Very good sense of. Ian always had a real sense of duty and to the job, and I think she chose him, or he was elected by his colleagues to do the deputy's job. So yeah, they were quite well complimented in one way, and that's not bad. You know, it might be different. It was never about the politics; it's about the relationship. If they won't work well together, good on them. That's probably what we need on the council at the moment.
I mean, mentioning that one, he is one of the members of the Newtown Festival Trust. After being roped into it by Martin and Anna when it shifted from the Newtown Residents Association to the Newtown Festival Trust, and it's like, Ian, we want you as a trustee, and he's still doing it to this day. I mean, it's been quite a number of years since he got roped into it.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. He likes to be involved, and he worked well with Celia. I think I didn't work in that administration. I was gone by then in 2010, but I certainly worked with both of them before 2010. Yeah, and they worked well together in that combination when she became the mayor, and when was it? October 2010 for what?
Yes,
2 terms?
2 terms. Yes.
Yeah. There you go. Oh well, see, there's a chance for the old Wellington City Council here. We'll see what happens in October, Sam.
Yeah. Okay. Pumjit Palmer.
Making this call on behalf of the ACT Party to support Juries' Age of Excusal Amendment Bill. I want to congratulate Member in Charge Carl Bates. Great to see that your Carl Bates bill has been drawn and it's here for the first reading. And we really look forward to seeing the outcome of this bill going through the select committee process. I've heard from members from the other side that this bill is a very simple bill. And sometimes those are the kind of things we need to do. It's the simple things that can add efficiency. And that is what this bill is about, adding that efficiency to our justice system. As we have heard that 47% actually of excusals are granted because of a juror's age. Juror being over 65, the person who is summoned to be juror over 65. And that creates a lot of work for the registrar, because when they deal with so many excuses, they have to then approach more people. And sometimes I have heard this, that the numbers of people those who approach are multiple times more than the numbers of people those who are needed. So imagine the kind of admin work that is needed to ensure that our justice system is able to work in a manner that it should. And having people, those who are over 65, coming and serving as jurors, and basically lifting the automatic excusal age from 65 to 72 actually creates that window where more people of that age bracket between 65 to 72 can come and be jurors. And of course, excuse will be available, as the member in charge has described in his opening speech, that for some reasons, medical reason or any other reason, if that individual cannot be a juror, those kind of things will be taken into consideration. Mr. Speaker, I have spoken to so many people, those who are summoned for jury service, and I have heard different kind of views not about the actual experience of being juror, but about them being summoned. So there is a lot of anxiety amongst people, because all of a sudden when they see us that they have to do jury duty, which is a very important part for our justice system, and it's our role as citizens, except some people, those who are exempted from that role, to serve as jurors when they're summoned. But then people have responsibilities. Young families have children, and then there are sometimes elderly people in the family to take care of. Sometimes the job commitments are such that they find it really hard. So it's not excusal coming from only people those who are over 65. There are a lot of other people applying for excuses as well on the basis of other grounds. So we can imagine the workload for a registrar to ensure that jury benches have enough people to conduct the trial. And the trial needs to happen in a fair manner. And jurors should reflect our community. And we know that we are living longer, and there are a lot of people out there after retiring at the age of 65. They would still like to contribute in whichever way they can, and giving them the opportunity to contribute by being juror, I'm sure our people, our senior citizens would be really proud of doing that. Mr. Speaker, it's really important to note that, yes, there are some examples from other countries, but our country, if you look at the population in that age group, the aging population is increasing. So we need to take those factors into consideration as well. And there is a lot of desire amongst older people to do a bit of work, not full-time maybe, but do a bit of work that they really like and they really enjoy. And I'm sure that our seniors, they really want to be part of our justice system, make the contribution to make our community safer. Because when people are on a jury, there is everything is based on facts. The evidence needs to be taken into consideration. There is no place for emotion in there. It all needs to be based on facts. So that experience of dealing with things, we know that sometimes it comes with age, and those are the kind of attributes that we can definitely utilize amongst our older people on a jury service. So this is actually a good bill. It is to improve efficiency of our justice system, and I really want to congratulate again the member in charge, Carl Bates, for bringing this bill to the House. Mr. Speaker, the ACT Party commends this bill. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know. I wish you mentioned about, but we've got to increase the pay.
Yeah, increase the pay. But yeah, I think what probably end up happening is we are going to probably see more older people come on, because again, they don't have the same level of commitments to like a job or anything like that as as the younger counterparts. But yeah, I am concerned that this is just a way to kind of get to not really improve the amount of pay for jury Hello, kitty cat.
Oh, I was just admiring that cat.
Oh,
what a beautiful cat. Come on, bring him back.
No, he doesn't want to come. It's typical cat.
Him? Him,
Yep.
is it? Yep.
Hello.
What's he got to say?
He's a cat of very few words.
Okay.
Let's see what Jamie Arbuckle's got to say.
To support this bill, the Jurors' Age of Excusal Amendment Bill. I'd like to congratulate Carl Bates, the member, for this bill and how it's been put together. It is, in fact, quite simple, with an increase of the age from 65 to the proposed 72, and I think that, as the member has said in his introduction today, is something that we discussed through Select Committee, and again, being a member of the Hard-Working Justice Committee, it will be another bill that we will put our minds to, and that age, whether it sits at 72, and the member has given some reasons around that, but it will also give the submitters the opportunity to look at that age and give some feedback, and I think that will be quite valuable through the Select Committee process. Just reading the existing legislation at the moment, I found it really confusing. At the moment, it uses in section 15.2, it says must exclude. And to me, from my RMA background, must would mean that you cannot sit if you're over 65. But then it goes on to another section in the existing legislation around 15A2, where it says a written application will permanently excuse you. So they're kind of saying if you're already over the age of 65, you're excluded. However, you can also write and be excluded, and I don't quite get the concept there. So there will be something for officials to explain the current legislation and how that actually matches together. And if we use that same terminology in this bill, just actually how that actually works. My story, I actually did want to tell a bit of a story around being on a jury, because it's something that I've always wanted to be a part of, and through my life experience so far, every time I get called to jury service, I've been a Marlborough District Councillor or something for certain reason haven't been able to serve, and had the unusual experience becoming an MP, being asked to be on the jury prior to becoming an MP, and obviously then being here as an MP, and then trying to explain through writing some letters that I was no longer eligible, because you're, as the Speaker would know and other members would know, we can't sit as a juror. Ended up being quite an episode, because as you write letters back and waiting responses, and obviously the post and the way that worked, it was right on the narrow edge of possibly having to be there, and I was like, I'm excluded. But so I couldn't use the excuse of being over 65, so maybe that's something, but that was a story there. So hopefully maybe increasing the age to 72 and a few more runs and years on my age may finally get to sit on a jury one day.
Yeah, you.
But Mr Speaker, as the member in charge has said, it is a narrow scope to this, what it is actually asking, and I'm gathering the story that I've just told. There will be a number of people out there with similar jury stories that will possibly ask for the scope of this to be widened, but as we find through the Business Committee, the scope is what we will be looking at will be the age increase. The member in charge has also said around just finding the numbers and the people to sit on jurors is harder, and I know sometimes they've got to go through a number of different applications or requested a lot of different people before they can actually fill the jurors up. So on that note, Mr Speaker, I will commend this bill to the House.
I call...
That's actually interesting how difficult it was to get out of it while you're not allowed to do it. But I mean, also him becoming MP was semi-unexpected as well.
They say the law's an ass, but there you go. Again, he didn't cover the cost of it. Let's hope that by the time he's finished his political career or whatever career he pursues after that, that the pay's gone up, Sam.
And he doesn't sit there and do a Winston Peters, who just won't go away. Nothing against Winston, just the fact is I don't want you to end up like a dying Feinstein, dying at 90.
He'll never serve on a jury.
I wonder if that is his purpose ploy as being an MP, is to avoid jury service.
Maybe that's the case, yeah.
Because, I mean, that was it believed to be the reason why Trump stood for president, was to avoid criminal accountability.
No. Seriously?
Yeah.
I wouldn't put past them.
Yeah.
Oh, let's get to the vote, because otherwise we will be here all night long.
Those of that opinion will say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The party vote is called for. The clerk will...
Oh, who voted no?
Greens. And I don't know what's happened on that one, but I'll go and look at the Hansard. Because that tells you, it does tell you the vote at the end of it is the Hansard.
Oh, it's Pāti Māori as well.
Oh, no.
Oh, so Te Pāti Māori actually turned up to do the vote. Because they went in the house, they didn't do the speech in the allocated spot because they have speech 6 as their normal allocated speech.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh.
But,
I wonder what their basis for objection to it is. Is it, again, is it the health thing?
access
Māori?
to getting to a jury, considering if you're at the back of the what's of a Potiki, trying to get to say a jury service, because I'm not sure if they have a courthouse in a Potiki now. I think you might have to go to Whakatane.
That is true. That could be a problem. A lot of Māori live in rural areas, so it could be difficult for them to.
Not just that, Laura. I heard one of them, a person talking the other day in the house, and they were just talking about life expectancy and general health, and I don't know. That's maybe something they need to look at it in terms of service. Yeah, I think as long as people are competent. Can sit, listen to the facts, don't show bias and that sort of thing. I'm quite happy if anyone. I don't care if they're 100 years old. I've met people that are 100 years old that are more lucid than 60 years old.
That's true.
They've been quite capable of sitting on a jury. So I think the age thing's a bit of a joke, to be honest. I don't see it as the issue. Maybe the pay is the issue in terms of asking people to do service like that. And I don't think people should be asked to do service like that. Just if you end up, for example, on a 6-week homicide inquiry, homicide case, or a complicated fraud trial by a jury, imagine it. It's a hell of an impost on people.
The ones that I think they got excused for 5 years afterwards was the one who did the Mark Lundy retrial. It was said that they were excused.
On what basis? On what basis was he excused?
Oh no, after their service, they were excused for 5-year exemption from future jury service call-ups. No, and it's quite.
Do you know the reasoning?
It's quite standard. It's quite standard for murder trials, rape, and all that. That the jury itself have served get a very prolonged period of exemption due to the nature of the type of work they had to do, because it's a lot more horrific than, say, dealing with I'd like to say a traffic violation, but they usually go to jury trials. But basically, it is quite a more extreme version, because you're having to look at evidence that is quite out there. It's not in your normal, what you call G-rated life.
And that case has just come to the fore again, hasn't it? Where he's been released on parole.
Okay, so let's get to the section of the bills that will coming up for submissions. Tonight, you've got till midnight, the Land Transport Management Time of Use Charging Amendment Bill. We also have the Plain Language Act Repeal Bill, due on the Wednesday the 14th of May. The Medicines Amendment Bill, due on Monday the 19th of May. The Employment Relations Termination of Employment by Agreement Amendment Bill closes on Budget Day, Thursday the 22nd of May. The Juries Age of Excusal, the bill we've just covered, closes on Thursday the 22nd of May. The Sales and Supply of Alcohol on Anzac Day morning, Good Friday, Easter Sunday, Christmas Day Amendment Bill also closes on Budget Day. And the Anzac Day Amendment Bill, the bill we've just covered, also closes on Thursday the 22nd of May, better known as Budget Day. And I think it's also Pink Ribbon Day as well.
It'll be about that time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Special
yes,
day.
yes. So, yes, we encourage everyone to get out there and submitting to our very valuable audience out there, just for people to sit there and know Parliament is in another week of recess. They're on a 3-week recess period. So we don't know what filler footage we're going to have, and I'll go and have a look at the calendar. But do we have select committees this week? It doesn't. So it doesn't look like there's any select committees this week. And the next sitting day is Tuesday, the 6th of May.
Not far
Yeah,
away.
so it's quite a bit of time. I do like Jason's one of Nikki No Budget. You'll have to wait till the 22nd for that one.
Bring popcorn.
Oh, yes. Bring popcorn. And I don't know, what else do we bring? A lot.
Alcohol?
Really? Oh, we did it last time.
No, it's been nice being on an alcohol-free show, actually, to be honest.
Oh, yes. Yeah, we don't need to do any drinking on the show.
You don't have to. Yeah, it's not compulsory. Yeah,
I was
that's
drinking
good.
this. I wasn't drinking rum.
What? Hang on. What's with the Coke, Laura? I wonder why you've gone quiet.
It's Coke Zero. It's healthy Coke.
Coke Zero. Yeah, the Coke Zero.
My dad's brother Richard won't sit there and back up that claim.
Don't worry, I've also got water.
That's good. Nice to hear. Yeah. What about the cat? The cat's been very quiet.
Hello.
He always does.
Maybe he's been into it.
Have you been drinking my Coke?
Trial by jury.
Have 12 cats on his pier there. Actually, is there enough cats on the property to be the piers, or do we have to get the possum to join in?
Well, I mean, there's Morty the possum, and we've got 2 other cats. I was to grab the neighbour's cats. Yes, I have a pet possum. I have a pet possum.
What? Have a pet possum? How
He
old?
lives in captivity. We've got a big aviary for him. But yeah.
Oh, wow. And how long have you had
About
him?
2 years now.
And did you get it from what? A tiny
Yeah, little Joey.
age?
Yep. He was found clinging onto his mother, who unfortunately was killed in a trap. So we just took him back, and we had an aviary for him and everything, and now he's just living happily out there, and he loves running on his big cat wheel.
Wow.
That's something that possums love doing, as we found out. And his favourite snack is corn.
His favourite snack
Loves
is
corn.
corn. Oh, wow. Yeah, oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Okay, so we will see everyone back here next Sunday for the Autopay podcast, where we get to know what our agenda will be, but we'll work out something between now and Sunday.
Yes.
So see you then. Have a good evening.
You want me to come back next Sunday?
Oh, we'll be back here.
Oh, you'll be back.
And feel free to stay for post-show chats. They always laugh.
Look, it was just a pleasure being here. Thank you, Sam, for the invite. Nice to meet
thank you
Laura.
for being on here, Captain Rob. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to Captain
Rob.
Speaking to
Sounds like Captain America.
Captain New Zealand. No, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, sir.
Love my country. Yep. You can call me Captain New Zealand.
Yeah,
I love my
Captain New Zealand. Yep.
Okay, we'll roll the closing credits. Whoa, wrong one.
Thank you for watching The Order Paper, your express ticket to the New Zealand House of Representatives. Every episode, we unravel the complex world of legislation, debate, and democracy. From bills to select committees, we've got it all covered. From our team of political commentators who will dissect and explain what's happened so you can remain up to date on what's happened in the Aotearoa, New Zealand Parliament. To support our channel, you can become a Patreon member at patreon.com/itsinthaballot. The Order Paper podcast is brought to you by It's in the Ballot.